welcome to Bharata First. You're watching Big Picture with me, Frank Pereira. Since you're here, please like the video, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and share the content as well so that more people get to know about Bharata First. Do subscribe to our newsletter to get some incisive content. This time's newsletter is on women empowerment. Ensure that you go through it. You can go to our website and get the newsletter in case you have not signed up for it. The Bharata First team runs several quizzes. You can participate in them. If you like our content, please contribute to keep it alive. A small contribution that you make will be a giant leap for us to keep bringing you this content. Let me also take this opportunity to inform you about Bharata First Knowledge Center. It's an initiative that will help each one of you in your competitive exams and transform the way you learn. Go to kc.bharatafirst.com for more details and register today. Experience a whole new way of gaining knowledge. Hundreds are already reaping the benefits of the Knowledge Center. Don't be left behind. Register right now because there's so much more that we have to offer at the Knowledge Center. All this information along with some must-see recommendations are in the description of the video. Please go through it. And now on to the discussion. There seem to be few takers for the Jammu and Kashmir administration's offer of domicile certificates to former residents who or their ancestors moved out of the erstwhile state years ago, provided they register with the Relief and Rehabilitation Commissioner at Jammu. Now, the administration has extended the scheme announced on May 16, 2020, with a deadline to apply within 1 year to May 15, 2022. The Office of the Relief and Rehabilitation Commissioner has also decided to hold special camps to accept applications at places where a minimum of 50 such families are residing. One such camp was held in Delhi around a fortnight ago. Jammu and Kashmir saw large-scale exodus of the migrant Pandit community, apart from Sikhs, around the time militancy began in the late 1980s. The administration hoped that they would avail the offer, which would make it easier for them to own land as well as get jobs and educational opportunities in the Union Territory. In this edition of Big Picture, we will analyze why the Jammu and Kashmir domicile offer has failed to attract exiled Kashmiris. Joining me on the program today are Ashish Dhar, co-founder Upward Foundation and a Kashmiri Hindu living in exile. Major General Ashwini Sivas, retired defense and security analyst. Thank you to both my guests for joining me on this edition of Big Picture. Ashish Dhar, let me start the program with you first. Let's try and understand before getting into what exactly is the domicile offer and why there are no takers for it right now. Let's try and understand the history of the issue and why we are here today so that we can understand it from a better perspective.
Right. So if we're going back into history, I mean, there's so much history to cover that it goes all the way back to 600 years. But I'm sure that in the context of today's discussion, we're talking about the Domicile Act, and therefore it is related to the act of making Articles 370 and 35A inoperative in the Parliament on August 5th, 2019. And what followed after that was that once you had made that change in legislation, the concept of permanent residency, which was basically the hallmark of the two articles, that also got eliminated. And therefore, now you had to find ways to declare who is now the citizen of the state and who is an outsider, not from an exclusivist standpoint as was earlier, but like you have in other states. So that's essentially what the Domicile Act or the domicile notification was about. So initially, it started off with the first order, which was passed somewhere in the beginning of 2021, where the class 4 jobs of Jammu and Kashmir would only be reserved for domiciles according to that notification. And so for people who were living in Jammu and Kashmir for 15 years, so that was the criteria which was defined for declaring someone a domicile of the state. But there was a lot of hue and cry as usual. I mean, anything that the government does, there's a lot of hue and cry in the valley all the time. So there was a lot of hue and cry in the valley about this as well. And so there was a second order, which was passed to pacify the people of the valley, and which basically extended that reservation not just class 4 employees, but all government employees, right? So that was essentially what it was. And it must be pointed out here that when the second order also came, it had completely forgotten about the Kashmiri Hindus who were living in exile. And then again, when there were people asking, what about them? And then there was an afterthought that the government had, and then they said that, okay, these guys can also apply. So that's the very brief history of the Domicile Act in relation to the Kashmiri Pandit community.
Absolutely. General, let me bring you into the picture now. Let's understand the circumstances that led to the, Kashmiri Hindus leaving Jammu and Kashmir, and how much of an impact has it had on the ground in Kashmir, because you spent a lot of time there, you've seen these issues, from very close quarters. So from a security and from a strategic perspective, how have things changed?
Yeah, Frank. First of all, let me tell you one thing. As a nation and as a security forces, we were not prepared for what happened in 89-90. The situation deteriorated so very fast that within no time, it was so bad that almost about 50,000 families of Kashmiri Pandit has to leave. The rumors were also there, and the establishment completely failed to take control of the situation. And therefore, a sort of anarchy was there in the valley, wherein the law and order was almost zero, and where, it was told that if you don't leave this area, you will be killed, and your woman will be taken here. So the situation was so chaotic, the people left it. They had no choice. Now, my point is, would we have not given a thought to it? Was our intelligence agency not able to think ahead and sort of predict on this issue? This is what is a question mark. Now, what has happened is, this is the time from 89-90 when the Soviet Union has withdrew from Afghanistan. Those Mujahideens were available, and they were well trained, well motivated. They were that time sent to Jammu and Kashmir. One. Second thing is, this is the time when after what was happened in Punjab, the situation normalized there. The Khalistan movement was almost killed, and that also was a lesson which was learned by Pakistan. So what they made a situation use, they sent this Mujahideen in Jammu and Kashmir. They activated the youth of Jammu and Kashmir, and this was going on for last 3-4 months prior to what happened, which is a failure of intelligence agency we could not make out. And when it happened like a tsunami. And all of a sudden, the complete valley in another 15-20 days was completely left the Kashmiri Pandit, who had no choice but to leave their home and go toward Jammu and other parts of the country. So my point is, did the nation fail that time? Could we have not foreseen this? Our intelligence agency could not see that. Did we not know what was happening there in Afghanistan? That point of time, the Mujahideen can come. Also, what lesson did we learn after we have managed to take over this Khalistan movement in Punjab? So very cleverly, when they did this thing in Jammu and Kashmir, there is one angle which not too many times it is spoken, that they only went for Kashmiri Pandit. They did not went that much against the Sikh community which was there. It was by design, by default, but this is a fact. In area Pattan around Singhpura and all, they did not go initially against the Sikh population which was there. So it was Kashmiri Pandit which were the targeted, and the Kashmiri Pandit had no choice but to leave the valley, and they came and became a migrants in Jammu and other part of the country. It was a sad incident. As a nation, we failed. Right. And till now, also, we have not able to make a robust policy wherein we can give them a confidence that they can go back. We are still struggling. Let's hope and pray that we come to some sort of a concrete plan in time to come. Frank.
These are very valid points that you have raised, General, and I'd like to take them forward with Ashish. Ashish, this issue of confidence really as far as the Kashmiri Hindu community is concerned, has the government of the day been able to instill enough confidence, so as to ensure that those who have been exiled can go back to their original places of dwelling? What is your thought on that issue?
No, absolutely not. The fact of the matter is that the government of the day, or for that matter, any other government so far, ever since we were kicked out of the valley, has not had the gumption or the clarity to spell out a roadmap for what they intend to do with the Kashmiri Hindu community. There could be multiple reasons for that, but sticking to the role of the present government, what they've been doing, especially after the events in August 2019, with Articles 370 and 335 being gone, uh, they've been trying to signal to the people of India that all is well in the valley, and just by changing a piece of legislation, they believe that things on the ground have changed, or the mindset of the people of the valley has changed. That is unfortunately a complete uh, illusion. There is nothing of that sort which can be expected by the change of a mere law. Uh, if the government were, in fact, serious about the return of Kashmiri Pandits to the valley, they would have first constituted a commission and investigated into the real reasons for the exile of the community. There is no official statement or official stand of the government of India as far as the reasons for the kicking out of Kashmiri Pandits from the valley is concerned. They have absolutely no stand on this. Whatever goes on in the media, in pop culture, and whoever has the mic, any opinion can be randomly taken by the government as is convenient for them in a given context, and which is why there is no long-term plan. And so when we come to I think I'll just stop there, and before you move on to General Saab, and then we can continue.
Absolutely. General Saab, coming back to you now, and building on the point that Ashish Dar has made about, how there has been some change on the ground with regards to 370 and 35A, but not to the extent and to the level like we would have desired. How do we change things on the ground, General Saab, so that the Kashmiris, Pandits especially, feel a lot more comfortable and feel a lot more secure and say that, yeah, maybe it's time for us to go back to where we came from?
Absolutely. Frank, first of all, once Article 370 and 35 was abrogated, a new wave of normalcy came in Valley. Panchayat election took place, district development council took place, grassroots level democracy has gone, development started off, tourism came in a big way, and you find the terrorism also reduced to some extent, and radicalization in South Kashmir also dropped. However, considering all this issue also, that normalcy was almost there in Kashmir, and you find the Kashmir going to a path of development. But as far as Kashmiri Pandit is concerned, we could not generate that confidence that they can go back to their original place. Now, there were two ways it was thought, that first of all, it was realized the situation is still not very conducive for the Kashmiri Pandit to go back to their native place in Kashmir Valley, because the mindset had still not changed. They are still vulnerable. Majority of silent population is with them. How do they handle the pockets of the terrorists? So they will be very vulnerable if they are sent back. If they are sent back, they can be easily a target. Now, the second option was that if that is the case, then why don't we make a cluster for them, a colony sort of thing, and keep them there rather than sending back to them to their various native places. Now, that also had a negative issue. If that is the case, then they will always remain a hostage in their own area also. So as on today also, I don't feel and I don't think that the situation is so very conducive that they can go back to their native place and live the way they were living before 89, 88. That situation is still not come because they are vulnerable. They can be targeted by any militant. The situation is very normal. Situation is under control. But you keep on hearing a policeman has been killed. A soft target can be easily targeted. So it is very difficult to give protection to each and everyone. And if the protection has to be given, they have to capture the cluster, then they are prisoned in their own area. So the point is, how do we go about it? So therefore, the mindset has not changed. Mindset of a majority of the population has changed, no doubt about it. They will like them to come. But what about those 5 to 10% which are either, you can say, a separatist, or which are basically a sleeper cell, OGW, or a few of them who are terrorists? No, they can be always targeted. So if they are sent back and they are killed, then you will go back from there to a very different place. So this is a catch-22 situation. There's no easy answer. This has been mulled over by different government, and the present government is very serious. They want to do something, but it is not an easy this thing. So when they find out from defense establishment, there are problems on ground. So it has to be given a very different rethought. How do we go about it? How do we generate that confidence? Not only in Kashmiri Pandit, and also ensure that they are safe. That's the mute question, Frank.
Absolutely, it is a difficult situation, and it's something that needs probably an iron hand with a velvet glove, and to deal with it in a very special way. I don't know what's going to happen and how things go forward. Talking about going forward, Ashish, coming back to you now, what would you like to see as you know, as a Kashmiri Hindu who's lived in exile? What would you like to see change on the ground, which will give you enough confidence to say, you know what, okay, fine, I have started a new life, but I'm willing to go back to my place of origin to see what it is like and start living there? What's going to give you that confidence? What needs to change, or what are the demands really as far as exiled Kashmiri Hindus are concerned?
Frank, before I answer your question, I would just like to comment on the points made by General Saab, and I would like to state that I profoundly disagree with some of the claims that were made, although some of the things, of course, I agree with. But saying that a majority of the Kashmiri population is sympathetic to the return of Kashmiri Hindus because certain Gram Panchayat elections were held or certain exercises were carried out is a misleading statement, because that is not based on fact, but it is based on a narrative, which the government is actively promoting. The fact of the matter is that we cannot look at the events of 89-90 in isolation, which is why in the opening remarks I had mentioned that the history, if we really have to look at the history and the trajectory of the events, we'd have to go back 600 years. So this 89-90, the exile that happened at that moment, was the seventh and the final exile. And before that, there have been 6 exoduses of Kashmiri Hindus from the valley. Even our first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, he came out from the valley before all that happened, right? He was settled in Allahabad. So to say that things have returned to normal is to take a very, very narrow view of history and to consider a blip in history to be something like a trajectory or a pattern. That is not the case. It's just some political changes happening. There's a lot of geopolitical forces that act on the valley, and the situation and the factors are so complex that it's very easy to get misled into believing that things are fine now, especially as far as the majority is concerned. But to come to your question now about what, as a Kashmiri Hindu, I would like to see, I think that there is no chance on earth that Kashmiri Hindus can return to the valley in the given circumstances. We've seen enough to not get misled by government rhetoric. And therefore, our long-standing demand from the last 30 years has been to carve out a separate homeland for Kashmiri Hindus in the valley. And I don't see why it is taken to be an extremist or a maximalist position. It is a very, very normal demand. We are, after all, the original inhabitants of the valley, and if we don't get our share, I don't know who's entitled to it, right? So one is that, but secondly, once you even carve out that piece of land, there will still be a significant chunk of the majority population still in that chunk also. And for that, what we had proposed was what is called the Kashmiri Hindu Resettlement Act, which could be formulated along the lines of, let's say, something like the SC/ST Atrocities Act, which makes the denial of atrocities against Kashmiri Hindus a punishable offense. It grants compensation to Hindus for the loss of life and property that was caused due to government inaction. You would need to set up special courts and perhaps a ministry to facilitate the resettlement, and so on and so forth. So there is a lot of actual work to be done and a lot of thought that needs to be applied before people in the government can pontificate and say that, oh, Kashmiri Pandits should just go pack their bags and go back. That's not just going to happen.
A quick follow-up question here, Ashish. So the demands that you spoke about, they are all well and good, and it would be ideal. But isn't it an idealist perspective? Do you see that actually happening? Do you see that actually happening considering the present circumstances that we are in?
Indeed. I mean, that's exactly the path that the government should pursue, because, I mean, for whatever reasons, which I am not privy to, for the last 30 years, the government of India has not acknowledged that Kashmiri Hindus have been kicked out because of their religious identity. I mean, all the governments have said that there was some Pakistan hand, there were Afghanis coming in, there was this, there was that, there was employment problem, all that. And somehow the elephant in the room is being missed. So, I mean, once you acknowledge that, once you set up a commission of inquiry, which is perhaps headed by or an SIT, and once you do that, then you will find for yourselves, and a white paper can be published, which clearly acknowledges the actual root causes for the exile. And then the next thing that you have to do is to reverse that, right? And to reverse that is exactly what I'm talking about. There is nothing illogical or fantastical about it. It's plain common sense, except the fact that the narrative has drifted so far away from the truth that now it appears that these are not realistic demands.
Right, points taken. General, let me get closing comments from you now with the best way forward, and how do we go about this?
First of all, what Ashish is telling, I have a complete sympathy for him. There's no doubt. The situation has not changed so much that you can go back. That's what I've been also telling you. You can't have faith and confidence. No one can go back and remain as unarmed man. There you are vulnerable. There is no doubt about it. Second issue, which is try to tell that if they can make a separate homeland for them. The problem comes is which area. What about those who are other than Kashmiri Pandit there? Where will they go? You see, there are problems there, but some sort of this solution may come in future. It can happen. There is no doubt about it. But I certainly agree on one thing, that Ashish, there is no doubt about it. They are the victim, and not much has been done by any government to take care of them. There's just no doubt about it. And we have to find out some solution. There, the solution of their sending them back in a present scenario or a situation slightly improving better, I don't think it's there. I have seen a security situation in last about 30 years. It is never so, it is not that comfortable that they can go back, because they will be vulnerable to even one or two, anti-social element or terrorist with the gun can create a havoc in well. So there is no doubt about it. So some solution, possibly what he's indicating, let's see, it is an out of box, something can build up. Now, as far as now situation is concerned, what more we can do? At least try that. Now, there are 24 seats which are there, which are of Pakistan occupied Kashmir there. At least those Hindus which are there, which have now become settled down in India and they are there, at least fill them. Why are you keeping them vacant? So that is one thing which we must do it. Out of 24 seats, at least try to fill maximum or minimum 12 seats. Second thing is, now the Kashmiri Pandit, you have to give them that confidence that wherever they are in India, they should register themselves. They should become a domicile of Jammu and Kashmir. When the election take place, at least they have some say. You know, that is very important unless you do not become, because what has happened is the Kashmiri Pandit which have migrated from Kashmir Valley, they are so hardworking, they have done so well that majority of them have settled down different places, they are doing well, they don't want to go back, of course, and they do not want to become a domicile also. Possibly if they become, I suppose at least they will make some impact on the politics of Jammu and Kashmir. Third thing is, I feel that, the government of the day has to do a lot to ensure the situation become as normal as possible and try to analyze, other than this option which Ashish is telling, that make a separate homeland, is there anything else can be done? Can there be a colony sort of a separate can be made for Kashmiri Pandit, they can go back? You know, that is also an option. I'm not saying that can become reality in future, because they're plus and minus, or create a situation which become conducive for them to go to only selected place. So such things can be also thought of, because as on today, we are on a dead end. We are not able to find out any solution. And as a nation, we have let them down. No government has able to do anything for Kashmiri Pandit so far. That point must be taken, irrespective of which government. Present government is keen to do, but they should do something concrete where the majority of Kashmiri Pandits feel that at least an attempt is made. So something has to be done, and no doubt about it, some sort of roadmap has to be made, wherein at least try your best, a possibility of taking them to the Kashmir Valley by keeping them in a separate colonies, giving them a protection, and making sure that they do not become a history. At least they are there. That option can be also tried in future if the situation improves. Frank.
Points taken. Gentlemen, we'll have to leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. Well, what's coming out of this discussion is that India has failed the Kashmiri Hindus who were exiled 3 decades ago. We shouldn't have allowed the atrocities to take place at all. It was a failure of intelligence agencies. We should have been better prepared to know what was at hand. Unfortunately, despite several efforts made by the government to deal with the issue, there isn't a robust policy to instill confidence in the Kashmiri Hindus. Yes, special status was abrogated in 2019, but things haven't changed enough on the ground for the Kashmiri Pandits to go back. If they are sent back, they will be easy targets at the hands of militants and separatists. There are no easy answers to the problem at hand. Carving out a separate state or a separate homeland may be the ideal solution. It requires massive political will, though. Camps or societies may not necessarily work and may just end up providing a false sense of security, and that's something that we need to watch out for. Now, before I go, once again, let me remind you to like the video, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and share the video as well so that more people get to know about Bharata First. Do subscribe to our newsletter to get some incisive content. The Bharata First team runs several quizzes. You can participate in them to improve your knowledge. If you like our content, please contribute to keep it alive. A small contribution that you make will be a giant leap for us to keep bringing you this content. Let me also take this opportunity to inform you about Bharata First Knowledge Center. It's an initiative that will help each one of you in your competitive exams and transform the way you learn. Go to kc.bharatafirst.com for more details and register today. Experience a whole new way of gaining knowledge. Hundreds are already reaping the benefits of the Knowledge Center. Don't be left behind and don't miss out. Register right now, as there's so much more that we have to offer at the Knowledge Center. All this information, along with some must-see recommendations, are in the description of the video. Please go through it. That's it from me. See you again next time.